Welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to start creating a lifestyle by design. From entrepreneurship, money and finance, tax optimization and residencies, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a true global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the show. And in this episode, I sit down with fellow global citizen and a friend of mine, Michael Kim. We talk all things about how he started his digital nomad travel journey and what really propelled him leaving his home country of Canada and starting this lifestyle. And it's probably not what you think. It definitely has to do with his health, the healthcare system in Canada and what he found abroad. So we dive into that. And of course, since he is a licensed CPA, we also dive into money and finances and the three pillars that you need to look at when you're thinking about becoming nomadic or starting a global citizen digital nomad lifestyle so that you can financially reset not only for the short to medium term, but for the long term and retirement as well. Let's dive in. Michael, welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I'm so looking forward to our conversation. Two Canadians who have both officially left Canada and living the digital nomad global citizen lifestyle abroad. So, share with us a little bit about you, where you started, and how you got to this amazing lifestyle that you live today.
First of all, Nicole, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. A few weeks ago, I had Nicole on my podcast, the Personal with Money podcast, and we connected pretty well. So we're like, okay, we got to do another podcast together. So thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So excited
So
to dive in.
yeah, my name is Michael Kim. I am a personal finance coach, digital nomad, and TEDx speaker. And how I got here was, this was not always the path that I wanted to go on. Growing up, I always wanted to just like have the stable 9 to 5 job, live in Toronto, just have like a very stable, comfortable life. But essentially, how I got here was growing up with a lot of financial difficulties, seeing my parents almost lose the house that they lived in. It really gave me a lot of anxiety when it came to personal finances. And so, seeing them struggle with money, I was like, okay, I need to avoid their mistakes and do everything in my power to learn how to effectively use my money. And so that's kind of began my like personal finance journey when I decided that okay, like, even though I love arts, even though I love music and like piano and all of these things, I can't really do these things right now. Because what I need to learn is how to effectively manage my own personal finances. So I decided to study the complete opposite. I studied accounting and finance in university in Canada, ended up getting my CPA designation, started working in corporate finance. And then I was able to take a lot of personal finance courses as well as read a lot of personal finance books on the side. And kind of like the accumulation of all of these things allowed me to learn how to effectively manage my personal finances. So once I graduated, I like knew exactly how to make money, how to save it, how to budget and invest it. So I was like, I'm good and I'm like pretty set. However, at the same time, a lot of my friends who were graduating at the same time, they were like struggling with their finances. They're like, I have no idea what to do. I'm like working for the first time. I have to start paying off student loans. And then that's when I started my personal finance coaching business, helping my friend with their personal finances. And so that kind of was the start of my business. And then how I ended up kind of leaving Canada and becoming a digital nomad was I did my first traveling trip in Poland back in 2015. This was like in first year university. And then I was like, oh my gosh, the world is so big and like the world is so beautiful. And I would love to work and travel anywhere in the world. So I was essentially able to learn how to use my money in order to create and design the life that I wanted. And it's because I learned how to make, save, and invest my money, this is what I was able to achieve. So in 2023, that's when I did my first digital nomad trip to Mexico. And since then, I've been traveling around Southeast Asia and around the world for the past year and a half. That's where I am today.
So let's first dive in since we were sharing a lot about your background in finance. What does it look like in terms of you making money on the road? What has that journey looked like? And what do you do now? And then we'll start with that. And then we'll dive into maybe some financial practices, tools specific to global citizens.
hmm So when I first decided, like, okay, I want to become a digital nomad, the first thing that you have to think about is like, how are you going to make money? How are you going to make a living? And back then, it was like before COVID and like before like the, remote revolution. There weren't like too many like accounting and finance jobs that I knew of that were remote. And so I was like, okay, well, first of all, I hate finance and accounting like jobs in the first place. And so I was like, okay, I want to figure out something that brings me joy that that I'm actually really good at and that also helps other people and I can work remotely. So I had to like check off like all of the 3 boxes. And luckily I came across coaching kind of just naturally. So as I was saying, like a lot of my friends, they were just, struggling with their finances and I just started helping them for free. And because their life, like, completely changed after working with them, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Michael, like, thank you so much. This is so helpful," because, you know, in Canada and the US, like, no one teaches you about, financial literacy. This was, like, the first realization of, like, "Oh my gosh, this is, like, something that I'm good at. This is, like, an amazing way to, like, help people that I care about, and, oh, yeah, I can also work remotely. Like, I don't need to be, like, face to face with them. I could just be on a Zoom call with them and then have the coaching call that way." And so I started my business back in 2020 while working, my corporate finance job. So I worked as a side hustle for almost 3 years before I went full time. So during those 3 years, I was able to learn the skills of how to effectively run a business, how to market it, how to do sales, how to, manage my business finances, which is very different from personal finances. And then now today, my business is able to cover all of my living expenses and more. And so this is how I kind of make a living through my business and how I'm able to travel around the world.
I love it. So inspiring to anyone listening who is starting their nomad journey or wanting to start that journey for themselves. So, what are some best practices, tips, resources that you can give for somebody who is starting out or wanting to start out on their nomadic journey, but not really knowing about the financial part? I mean, like we all know how to like book an Airbnb or a flight, but it's like, how do all of these pieces come together in terms of money management?
Mhm. Great question. So, what I like to think about is that money management itself is a skill. And it's a skill where if you learn and master the skill, you can literally choose to do anything with your life, right? Like once you learn how to effectively manage your money, you could, if you want to buy a house, you know exactly how to use your finances to buy a house. If you want to, go on a digital nomad trip and become a digital nomad, if you learn and master the skill of money management, you can do that. And so, what I like to break down the skill of money management into 3 main parts. So, the 3 main skills is how to make money, how to save money, and how to invest it. So, once you master these 3 skills, you can literally choose and do anything that you want. And just like with any skill, for example, like tennis, you could either be like a beginner tennis player where like, you can't really hit the racket or the ball. And then or you can be an expert tennis player where it's like, you're extremely skilled at this. And it's like same thing when it comes to money. Most people, because they didn't spend the time and energy to learn about their finances, they're still at a beginner level when it comes to money management. And so I would say that in order to learn how to become a digital nomad, you have to first master these 3 main skills of how to make money, how to save it, and then how to invest it.
Ooh, okay. So let's dive into a few of those a little bit more. I think not so much making money because that could be a course. But let's talk about how to save your money. What are some best practices you see around that? And then I'm also curious on the investment front, what you, even just on a personal level, what you recommend. I mean, living a global citizen lifestyle, there's so many ways to invest money, whether it's in different markets, in real estate, in land, if you want to maybe do it in your home country with crypto. Like there's so many options these days.
Yeah, so when it comes to first saving money, what I like to think about this is not necessarily like, oh, like restricting and like, conserving money and like, booking a really cheap ass hostel where like you hate your life at the end of the day. But it's more about how do you want to plan your finances for the future. So it's almost like, so what you want to do is you create a financial plan that shows you exactly how much money you're making, how much money that you're spending, and then how much money of that can you actually save. And, people do this when you have a regular 9 to 5 job because it's so helpful in order to help you achieve for your long-term goals like retirement and all of these other things. But then as a digital nomad, it like gets a little complicated because you're like on the go, you're in different places. And that's the reason why it's so important to learn about how do you create a dynamic financial plan that is easy to use, easily customizable for like if anything were to change, and then how do you actually use this plan so that you can start saving money on a regular basis so that you're, the typical idea of a digital nomad is like you're just making money and you're just like, you're finding ways to like pass time by. But then if you want to think of like a digital nomad as a long-term lifestyle, you have to start thinking about, okay, I get to enjoy my life now, but then how am I going to save some money for the future, for retirement, for other big future financial goals as well. So that's the saving front of things. And then the investing part of things. So the reason why we want to be investing money in the first place is because costs in our economy and costs in our world are rising exponentially. You see this in Canada, in the US, and even in like, typically cheap countries that are, no longer that cheap. Like Mexico used to be so much cheaper many, many years ago. Now it's like, oh my God, like this taco is so fucking expensive. So the reason why we want to be investing our money is so that we can negate the negative effects of inflation and actually increase the value of our money so that in the future, when we want to buy things, we can still afford to buy things. And so there are many, as you said, there's so many ways to invest your money. And what I would like to say about investing is that you want to invest in what you know. You want to invest in what you are good at. For example, for me, because I did a lot of research and I went to study accounting and finance in university, I'm pretty well learned on like the stock market, on how that works, different investing strategies. The investing strategies that I do are like passive investing, just like, plain ETFs and like very simple. And at the same time, I also do stock options trading, which is a little bit of a higher level skill level, but it gives me greater returns. This is what I invest in because this is what I know. And so if I were to, but if someone were to like have no idea how to invest in stocks, but let's say they're amazing at real estate, they like know like, how to build a house or like they know like, oh, this is a good house or not, then for that person, maybe real estate is the best investment for them. So when it comes to investing, you really want to invest in what you know. And if you don't know, how to invest, then you have to learn about, okay, which area of investing do you want to invest your time and energy to learn more about it?
I love that. That is so powerful. And I like that you really break it down very simply into these three easy to understand categories. Um, okay. So before we move on from finance, I mean, I know we could probably have multiple episodes about this. Is there anything important that you want to include about finance for this audience, for digital nomads, for anyone starting out on their journey or a few months or even a year into their journey that's really important for them to know and to understand?
Yeah, I would say when it comes to money, a lot of people think it's like a numbers game, but I would say like 50% of it is a mindset and emotion game. So it's like what I like to tell my clients is that all of the financial problems that you're currently facing is either 50% a logical problem and 50% a mindset problem. And what I mean by this, so sorry, it's a 50% a strategy problem and then 50% a mindset problem. So when I say like a strategy problem, this is like, okay, if you have no idea how to invest into the stock market and like you don't know like which ETFs or what is the best strategy, this is kind of a strategy problem. However, let's say you learn about all of the strategies, or let's say you are even scared to even open your first personal finance book or YouTube channel that to talk about stocks. This is more of a mindset problem. A lot of people, the reason why a lot of people don't want to deal with their finances and they don't ever learn how to manage their finances is because of this mindset problem. Because if you have a lot of fear and anxiety when it comes to money, when it comes to investing, when it comes to, oh my gosh, like budgeting is so annoying. If you have all of these negative thoughts and feelings toward money, then what are you going to do? You're probably going to avoid it. It's like if you have a, coworker and they are super annoying, they stress you out and they're intimidating, you probably don't want to spend much time with them. And it's the exact same thing with money. And so when you're thinking about your financial problems and like, some of the obstacles and you're wondering why am I not able to do this? It's probably because of your mindset when it comes to finances and it may or may be from the strategy, like just like you not knowing, but it could also be this mindset portion as well.
Are you looking to become a diversified global citizen? If this is a lifestyle that you're seeking to create, we can help. Whether it be multiple residencies, citizenships, bank accounts, trusts, or company formations, we operate in 30 plus of the most tax friendly jurisdictions around the globe to get you structured properly. Head to the link in the show notes to learn more and to get your global citizen journey underway today.
Interesting. Okay. I'm debating whether or not to ask you about money and mindset because I know like that can go deep. But I think actually, instead of talking about that, I think one thing, and you're still in the Canadian system. I know we talked about that a little bit on the episode that we recorded on your podcast, but one thing that I see that is beneficial if you're an American or a Canadian, you do all your banking in one country, is that it's so much easier to understand your finances just because there's so many softwares and programs. Like I know Mint, I think that's not around anymore, but that used to be one. They're in the US at least, Copilot. Like there's all of these amazing softwares that link up your bank accounts and your credit cards. And that is something that I have found difficult living a very global citizen lifestyle is that when you have like 10 bank accounts in 5 or 6 different countries around the world, there's no one platform that really integrates it all together. And I've thought about starting that platform, but I don't think that's going to happen for me. But it's a personal struggle. And it's a struggle that I see a lot of what I call global citizens who have left their home country and they don't have access to just one country's banking system anymore that they face. So it's not really a question, but just in terms of finance, a struggle that I have had because then you just have to go and create your own system or figure out what works best for you in order to know what's happening and in a holistic view monthly.
Yeah, and I think like kind of what we talked about on the previous podcast that we did together, something that you really did, and I think a lot of people struggle with is like want to have everything figured out before they go on their digital nomad trip, right? Like they're like, okay, like where are the bank accounts? Where are the, how am I going to make money? How am I going to do all of these things? And the truth is like you will never have everything figured out. And, like, when you went on your first trip, Nicole, you had no idea, like, what you're doing. You kinda just went and you're like, "Okay, I'll just figure things out." And you did, right? Like, you were able to figure out like, how to do research and, like, how taxes work and all of these things. And it was the exact same thing for me, like, when I quit my corporate finance job, I think we'll kind of talk about it, but, like, I essentially, like, paused my business at the time because of my health. And so I also didn't have anything figured out, and I just booked my trip to Mexico, and, things just happened to work out. And I learned things on the go about like how to, how currency works in Mexico and like what are the best credit cards and all of that. And so I think a lot of people, if you're a digital nomad or want to be a digital nomad, you might feel really overwhelmed to be like, oh my gosh, I need everything figured out. But you don't. You can just do the first 3 steps, do it, and then figure the rest out later.
Definitely. And I think really depends on the type of person you are, but I think most people who are wanting to become nomadic are more so the type of person where it's fun and it's exciting. For me, it's like, I don't know where I'm staying next week and I don't have a place to live and I don't know what country I'm going to be in. It's fun and it's exciting. And it's also a perspective shift of how you choose to look at it. Do you want this difficulty in this amazing life, or do you want a difficulty in a more stagnant life? I don't want to say, but in a life in your home country where you're living in one place and, everything is situated in that one town or city. So it really, I think of it as kind of a choose your hard situation, and everyone's lifestyle looks different. I think if you're listening to this podcast, though, you probably know which one you fall under. So I want to talk about your health journey and what that has looked like for you and how that was in part a catalyst of you wanting to leave Canada and become nomadic.
Of course. So as I said, I first decided that I want to be a digital nomad back in 2015. So a very, very long time ago, like almost a decade ago, when I first did my trip in Poland. And I never really traveled much as a kid. I never like went out of Canada or the US because we couldn't really afford it as a family. And so I did my first solo trip in Poland and I was like, "Oh my god, the world is so amazing and like there's so much to see." So I was like, okay, I definitely want to make this happen. And so in 2019, that's kind of when I graduated university and then started like essentially trying to make this digital nomad dream happen. And it took a lot longer than I thought. I thought like, within like 1 year, I'd be able to quit my job, or 2 years, I'll be able to quit my job. I ended up staying at my job for almost like 4 years. And part of the reason why was because in 2022, almost like 2021, 2022, I started dealing with a lot of health issues. So, on the surface level, I started dealing with a lot of chronic eczema, like dry skin, inflammation, hives, like literally all over my body. But then on like the inside, like in the inside of my body, it was more of a deeper problem because I couldn't even go to the washroom. Like I couldn't get toxins out. And so because I couldn't get toxins out, it was just coming out in the form of my skin. And so it was so painful that like some days I could hardly move. Some days I like was like limping around the house and my mom was like, "Oh my god, like you are not okay." And so essentially it came to a point where in 2023 I like couldn't focus at my job. I was like in so much pain. Like my job performance was clearly going down because I'm like, scratching all day like I can't even focus on work. And so I ended up quitting my job because I was like I can't do this anymore. So I quit my job in April 2023. And then it came to a pivotal point where, like, even though I quit my job and, like, wasn't really stressed anymore, my skin and health still didn't improve. And so I had this conversation with one of my friends, and he gave me, like, some hard truth. He was like, "Well, you're suffering now at home. You might as well be suffering at the beach and, like, in a nice place." And I was like, "Ah, that's very true." So then after that conversation, I was just like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna go to Mexico and, like, see what happens." And so I booked a one-way trip to Mexico in like September 2023. And literally within 3 weeks, like 90% of my health issues went away. And like to this day, I don't know if it was like the food, the water, the climate, or something in Mexico, something magical in Mexico. But yeah, like all of my eczema was gone, all of my hives were gone. And it was truly a miracle because I thought that this was a health condition that I would have to live with for the rest of my life. And then I went to Mexico and realized that, oh, when I travel, my health isn't that bad anymore.
So what do you think it was? Or did you ever get to the root cause? Or was it literally just your mindset being in Canada and how that was compounding over years?
So I definitely think it was more of an environmental thing. So I think like living in my house, um, so not sure if I should say, but like, okay, so essentially in 2021, a lot of people got a certain shot, and there are some people who had, didn't hurt them at all. And then some people, they actually had a reaction to it. And so for me, and also my sister and some other family members, we actually had pretty bad reaction. Like my sister, like these days, is also dealing with a lot of health issues, skin and inflammation related as well. And so I think because of this certain shot, we are just like super hypersensitive to everything in the environment. And the thing is, in Canada, it's like, you don't know what's in the food. We take kind of like our food from America, where like they put a lot of chemicals in the food. There's lots of preservatives. For example, like in Canada, our carrots, they like last forever in the fridge. Like you never have to throw them out. But in Mexico, you buy like carrots from the farmer's market and they last for like a week in the fridge. And you're like, there must be like something in the food. So there's like the food in Canada that's questionable. And then there's the climate in Canada, which is also not great for if you have dry skin. We have pretty long winters, like 6 months out of the year. It's like freezing cold. You have to be blasting the heater, which is super drying for the skin. So there's the food, there's the environment, and then also let's talk about healthcare. Like we talked a little bit about this on the previous podcast, but the healthcare in Canada was not helping. I was talking to, family doctors, dermatologists, all of these quote unquote specialists who are supposed to help you. And they're like, oh, there's nothing we can do. Or, oh, there's nothing we can do, but like you can try out this new drug and do like clinical trials and like hope you get better with this like injecting a bunch of new chemicals in you that may or may not work. And so this was literally the support that I was getting from Canada's healthcare. And, people call Canada's healthcare free, but it's not really free because we're paying for this healthcare with our insane amount of taxes that we pay. And so, like, that kind of changed my perspective. Like, if Canada is not looking out for me, if I'm paying all of this taxes for Canada to provide this horrible healthcare system that can't even help me, then I might as well go somewhere else in the world, pay less taxes, have more money to take care of my health and things that actually will benefit me.
What a journey. Wow. I don't know if it was a podcast I was listening to. It what probably was a podcast recently. And somebody had mentioned that they were, I think it was somewhere in Central or South America, and they went to a doctor. And instead of looking at, like, let's say it's a dermatologist, so instead of just looking at the skin, the doctor understands the holistic picture of health because skin is not isolated from dentistry, is not isolated from, I don't know, all of these other where there's specialists in all of these areas. But really, you can't just treat one isolated problem because they are all compounding on each other. And so I thought that was really interesting. So I think that is going to be one of my next feat in Latin America probably is to find a specialist and some doctors who really understand this holistic picture instead of just going to different specialists. But I totally agree. I mean, I know firsthand how the healthcare is in Canada. And I think I shared on your podcast, I shared the story and I'm curious what your stories and your journeys have looked like. And even the insurance provider that you use now, if you use something when you're outside of Canada. But I needed to get an MRI. I couldn't walk for months. I had this like chronic knee issue. It'll never be 100% better, but I couldn't walk for months. And in Canada, when I was there just quickly over one summer, they told me I think it was going to be a 6 to 8 month wait. And yes, it was free in terms of price, but you're paying with your time. And so I'm not going to wait 6 to 8 months not knowing what the heck is going on. I went back to where I was living at the time, which was in China, and within 10 days, I had the MRI, I had it in hand, I still have it today, I got to keep it, and it cost me like $100 or something crazy.
Yeah. The healthcare in Canada is not very helpful. And yeah, like you hit it on the head. Like the reason why it's so flawed is because you have a heart surgeon who specializes in only in the heart. And then you have a dermatologist who only specializes in the skin. But then the body is like a whole system where the digestion impacts the skin and your lungs impact your skin and everything is like interconnected. And the reason like I would go to dermatologists and be like, "Oh, like does it matter what I eat? Like, should I maybe like have eat clean food or like should I not be eating chocolate or something like that?" And the dermatologist was like, "No. Nothing you eat impacts your skin. Just like eat whatever you want. You just need to be on these drugs, like take these steroid injections." And I'm like, that doesn't really make much sense because like when I eat McDonald's, like I will have a huge breakout, right? Like, and so but like this is what these doctors are taught. And if you think about it, a lot of pharmaceutical companies fund a lot of these medical hospitals and these like medical education. And so the doctors and the pharmaceuticals will make a lot of money by just selling you drugs and prescriptions, right? Like that's how pharmaceuticals make money. And so the doctors are taught to just be people who prescribe drugs to people that may or may not even help people. Or it may reduce the symptoms, but it's not solving the real reason why you're having this problem. And so that's the reason why like there's a big like movement in the health world where there's a lot more naturopathic medicine and holistic medicine where they take a look at the body as a whole. And places I'm actually going to a place in Mexico, Puerto Vallarta, and they are actually known to be like very big on this alternative form of healthcare. I will say though, like, and this is why it's so important for you to have a good understanding of your personal finances. Because when I was dealing with these health issues, I couldn't rely on regular doctors and insurance in Canada. So for to see like any holistic doctor, to afford any of the supplements and healthcare from these holistic doctors, I had to pay everything out of pocket. I was spending close to like $500 to $1,000 a month for this healthcare. And, and there was a big burden because it's like you literally, insurance won't cover it. And so this is why it's like, yes, like health is wealth and like, health is always the priority. But what I really learned is that you need money in order to take care of your health at the same time. There's no way that I would be able to go to Mexico in 2023 if I didn't have a good form and good financial situation in order to afford and fund that trip to go there.
Definitely. So, on that topic, when you are traveling, are you using a certain type of health insurance, medical insurance, travel insurance? What does that look like?
Mhm. So, I feel like, this is a great question for you because I'm still pretty new to it. So I honestly just went with like, what all of the digital nomads are talking about, safety, what is it? Safety cloud, safety nomad, something like that.
Safety wing?
Safety Wing, there we go. Safety Wing. So I'm just with Safety Wing, and it's been pretty good. When I went to Vietnam, I had a little like ear infection and stuff like that, so then I could just like claim it under insurance. So that's kind of what I use. I would love to know what you use because you're the expert and you've been doing this a lot longer than I have.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting on that topic, because I think it depends what you're looking for. And if you're really just looking for, not like the gadget insurance, just the straight health insurance, it also depends on your situation. So I know you're still somewhat tied to the Canadian system. So you can, if you wanted to, go and get free healthcare. I don't have that option. So I do use and partner with a program who they offer there's no, like, one size fits all. So they will go through all of the insurance providers in the world based on where you're from and your age and what you really are needing, any pre-existing conditions, everything, and they will pick out what works best for your situation in terms of long-term health insurance. So that's usually what I recommend more so when somebody is out, like, living a a very much so global citizen life where they're not attached to their home country. And usually you're going to be attached to a more tax beneficial country, but the infrastructure may not necessarily always be there depending on the country for excellent quality of healthcare. So you want to be able to, let's say, travel to the next country or travel somewhere else and then use this insurance where the quality of healthcare is a little bit higher. Um, and I will say, like, for any of these plans that are more comprehensive, you're probably looking at like 2, 3, 400 a month USD. So it's a little bit more than a safety wing, but it's really, and I think it goes like multiple millions of coverage and like all the things. It's kind of a standard plan that you would have living in any one country. So if anybody listening wants that link, then reach out and I'm happy to connect you directly with one of the founders because it is very much so personalized. Not like you can just go on a website and put in your age and like, oh, here are all of your options.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good point. I will say that I do have some disability and critical illness insurance that I have like privately. So this is even like if I were to, be unable to work, let's say God forbid something happens, then at least I have this insurance to make sure that I can cover any sort of expenses that I have, just in case. And when it comes to insurance, it's always best to like do this when you're healthy and like when you're good. And so luckily I did this like before all of my health situation. But then at the same time, it's like when it comes to like traditional health insurance, it isn't really helping you with autoimmune disease. It isn't really helping you with like chronic eczema or if you're like, struggling with any of these types of condition, which is still quite unfortunate that in our healthcare system, a lot of these insurance providers will not like cover you for like treatment for eczema or like these types of things. So you really do have to like pay out of pocket. Like I just got quoted in this clinic in Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. And for treatment for like this condition that I'm dealing with, they're like about $5,000 to $10,000 USD. And it's quite a big amount of chunk, like chunk of cash. But if it's actually going to work and if it's actually like going to help improve my health, I realize that when my health is good, business is good. And when business is good, money is good. And so it's kind of like a holistic cycle. And so see your health as an investment. And you gotta like, invest in your health now because, especially when you're older, healthcare costs is one of the most expensive costs that you're going to have in the future. So if you start taking care about your health now, you're going to already set yourself up financially and for the future.
Definitely. Well, this has been very interesting to talk on various different topics with you. And so thank you for sharing your perspective. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. You guys can find me on Instagram at Michael Lee Kim or on YouTube also at Michael Lee Kim. And I also offer free financial assessments for people who ever want to kind of have an expert's eyes on their specific financial situation and for them to understand like what are maybe some specific things that they can do in order to achieve their financial goals. So if you want to apply to get a financial assessment with me, you can just go to michaelleekim.com/assessment.
You've just listened to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. If anything from this episode resonated with you, I'd appreciate if you share this podcast on your socials. And of course, be sure to tag us at Work, Wealth, and Travel. And don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining us on this global citizen journey, and we'll see you in the next episode.